Why does World of Warcraft get such a bad rap? This one's been on my list to talk about for a couple of months, but I just kind of wanted to gather my thoughts before we really dove into this subject because I've been playing since pretty reliably. I mean, I think pretty much every single day since BlizzCon 2023. And I had dabbled before. I did when Classic launched, I did that, did Burning Crusade Classic, did Wrath of the Lich King Classic, but I never played vanilla. And I didn't get into retail until BlizzCon, right? And went through Battle for Azeroth, Shadowlands, got into Dragonflight. I've leveled multiple characters now to level 70. I've just been having a blast. We're raiding in Dragonflight with the guild. It's a great time. I'm having a great time. And one of the interesting things to me is because I'm new, one of the reasons why I'm having a hard time seeing all of the issues that some people have is because I'm not coming into this with the jaded veteran's perspective of, oh, they've changed these 500 things over the years. And that definitely colors my experience because I can come and play the retail experience as of 2023, 2024 and say, oh my God, this is a highly polished, extremely streamlined, it's a great single player RPG with MMO elements, and I'm having a great time. Happy to pay a subscription. I prepaid for a whole year. We're committed to doing the entirety of the World Soul Saga. Like, I am having a great time in this game. Which brings me back to the question of where does all the negativity come from? Because I hear a lot of people talk about toxic players. I've never seen any toxic players. But I do have streamer privilege in the sense that I play with a group of people who are from the community that I've known for going on 10 years. My brother and I have ran guilds in other games before, and so that we always have a core of people who move game to game whenever I do an MMORPG, and then we build from there and we flesh things out. So I'm not relying on pickup groups. But I have done quite a few pickup groups in this game, just like I have in Star Wars: The Old Republic and Lord of the Rings Online and every other MMORPG out there. I've been playing MMOs for 25 plus years, and I've never had the toxic encounters that so many people claim are somehow like the source of all of those is like World of Warcraft. Anytime somebody starts talking about toxic players in MMOs, they always want to say World of Warcraft is the worst player base ever. I've just not found that to be the case. I've been genuinely finding people to be helpful. We're on the Moonguard server. The closest I would come to saying there are people who don't really go out of their way to, interact with you or be nice with you or whatever is when you're running looking for dungeons. That's the only time. Anytime you run looking for dungeons, people just want to rush and they don't want to talk to you. But that's to be expected. The looking for dungeon thing is just there for people who don't have a guild and are just looking for ways to get stories done. With follower dungeons these days, you don't even have to use the looking for dungeon finder if you don't want to. You can literally run the dungeons by yourself, solo, with no expectations. You can get the story out of it. You can get normal gear out of it, right? So, looking for dungeon in my mind has always been about that's the speed run option. Otherwise, you find a good guild. And I've always said that I've never understood people who claim that these games are antisocial or that these games have toxic players because I have always found that if you just go to the forums or you go to Reddit or you go wherever you want to go, you can go somewhere online and just look for people who are recruiting, look for guilds who are recruiting, maybe put a message out there. Here's the times I play, here's what I'm playing, here's what I'm looking for. I have never had that fail in 25 plus years of MMORPGing. I've always been able to find people to group with, always. So I'm not on board with the whole well it's all these toxic players because I just don't see it. Does that mean that there aren't toxic players? No, but I do think that a lot of times when people are talking about toxicity, it could be something as simple as a misunderstanding of a pull or a misunderstanding of a camp. But those are all things that are 25 years ago. Nobody does camps and things of that nature anymore because mobs have shared XP, or not shared XP, but shared quest credit. So whoever tags the mob gets quest credit. So it's like, and it's not like it's a big deal if you miss this one because it'll respawn again in 3 to 5 minutes. So it's, those kind of arguments that maybe potentially could have been valid 20 years ago haven't been valid for many, many, many years. So then we have to observe, well, what about the balance changes that have happened over the years? Is that the reason we have jaded ex World of Warcraft people who try to claim that this is a horrible game? Is it because their favorite class got a balance pass at some point, and because I've seen this one from some people as well, is that, well, I played the game up until insert expansion here, Mist of Pandaria, Lich King, whatever, and then they will make a claim along the lines of, and that's when they ruined the hunter, and that's when they ruined the priest, and that's when they ruined the warrior. Like, they will always have an expansion in their mind where they say that this is when the game stopped being fun for me because they ruined my class. And I just have never taken those people seriously, because if you've ever worked in game dev, ever on a live service game, or if you've ever worked on anything that is a live service product, you are going to make changes to that product over the course of its lifespan. I don't look at McDonald's. McDonald's was so different when it was in its first iteration. Coca-Cola was completely different in its first iteration. Changes happen along the way to accommodate for modernity, things we learn through science, things we learn, people having allergic reactions, so on and so forth. And it's no different here. As games grow, as these live service products grow, they take upon themselves millions of new lines of code when spread across all the things that are laced together, from chat servers to login servers to the microtransaction system and how that all ties into the pay system. Like, there's so many factors going on here that it's only natural that things have to be tweaked here and there over the years to accommodate for new problems that arise or new play styles that developers didn't consider, and they went, oh wow, you're not supposed to be able to use that ability in that way, we're going to have to change that. Those things are natural, and so like I said, I've never taken those people seriously, because if you can't handle the reality of a live service product changing over time, then you should probably stick to single player RPGs that only have a few 100,000 people playing them. It could be a few million, doesn't matter. But single player games where they don't do a ton of changes after it's out the door. They might make some patches, but they're not going to come down the road 10 years later and change the way that game works. Whereas that could very much happen in an MMORPG, because you're doing continual updates to the game over time. So I'm always curious about that one as well, because I just don't consider that to be a reason that I would ever quit playing a game. I've been playing MMORPGs for 25 years, and I have quit games because I got tired of them. EverQuest 1 after 7 years, I was ready for EverQuest 2. EverQuest 2 after 7 years, I was ready for other things. Lord of the Rings Online, Star Wars: The Old Republic. You know what I mean? Like, coming into other games, Guild Wars 1, Guild Wars 2. Like, there are other games out there. And as we got more and more games to start playing, I just naturally began to go play other games because I want to play more. And now we are in, 2024, where I'll play, especially as a content creator, I'm playing at least, probably 12 to 15 new games a year. I don't go beyond that. I don't really do games every week. I might do 2 games per month, on top of whatever MMO I'm playing. So the occasional first impression video I don't count, because I might do 2 or 3 of those in a month, but I don't play those games. So, you know, I've never quit a game because of a class balance thing ever, and I just don't. I would never do that. Like, but that's just because my brain goes back to, well, I've always loved Coca-Cola. I will drink Coca-Cola until I'm in my deathbed. I don't care what version of Coca-Cola I'm drinking. I just like Coca-Cola. Like, same thing with games. Like, if I like a game, I'm gonna play it. I don't care if they make changes to my classes along the way. Um, it's just, it is what it is. It's like, oh, you want me to play my ranger differently this week? Okay. The core of my class is still there, even if they change the way a couple of abilities work. So like right now, I'm watching people who are flipping out online because Apex Legends just nerfed, as they call it. They made a balance patch. They said those of you who are playing with a controller and are using this ability, alt strafing or something, I forget what it's called, but they just took it out of the game for controllers. And controller players now are all upset because they're like, oh, but that became viewed as cheating because the people on a mouse and keyboard couldn't do that. And players on controller already get aim assist, so it was like, it's necessary for balancing because people were using that ability in a way that the developers didn't feel was appropriate for the game and felt like they were giving them an undue advantage. So they balanced that out. They nerfed it, as people will say. Tons of controller players right now are like, no. But the funny thing is it's all the people who came to rely on something as opposed to necessarily being great at actually shooting. Came to rely upon a gimmick, and that's the thing. When a balance pass happens, if you've come to rely upon the gimmick that wasn't the way the developers intended that to be played, then you kind of lose the right to complain because it's not your game. Like, you're not developing it. If you're developing a game and you see that there's a problem, you're going to punch that hole, you're going to patch that hole up and fix it. You're not just going to let it go rampant. So I think that a lot of times I don't really consider that to be something that, I don't know. I just don't agree with the idea that a balance pass is something to leave a game over or to hate a game over. It's like those things just happen. So that's one I'm curious about. And then also, what about raid tiers? This is another one I see. Like, we've seen this debate crop up in guild chat, I don't know, 3 or 4 times in the last few months, which is somebody will ask a question like, is Shadowlands worth doing? And I will always say, yes, I loved Shadowlands. But I came into doing Shadowlands after it wasn't, I came into Shadowlands when Dragonflight was current. So I only ran it for the storyline. And so when you talk about it from a storyline perspective, everyone says, yeah, Shadowlands story was it's good. It was all right. It's not the best, not the worst, but it was pretty decent. But here's all these things we didn't like. And the thing most people talk about isn't raid stuff. It is the content drought where there was a really long time between patches and people had nothing to do. That's a legitimate reason to criticize a specific um, expansion, if you will, if there's a content drought. But every company goes through that, so I don't think that's something that's unique to World of Warcraft. So I don't really think that it's a thing that I would criticize. It definitely sucks if you're playing a game live when they have a content drought. That can feel frustrating. But I think anybody who's played a game for more than 5 years realizes that every MMORPG company out there has peaks and valleys. So that's one of those things where I'm really interested about. The raid tier thing, though, I do understand why people would get burnout on the rotation of just every year. Let's say there's a new expansion, so we got to climb that ladder again. I think it's been every 2 years though with World of Warcraft, but you have the seasonal content in between. But the ramp, right? It's the always ascending ramp. Like, you're never getting off that escalator. Because every expansion, all the gear that you worked for in the previous expansion is now null and void, and you got to start that gear grind all over again and go through the raid tiers and everything else. So, I could see some people being, grumpy about that if they've done it 50 times, but I would also argue that based on the data, that's 1% of the player base. So again, that's really not something that I would consider to be the vast majority of players, and so it doesn't really, in my mind, impact the actual reality of the game. So this is when we get to the crux of the story here, because everything I've seen in World of Warcraft related to the world building, the storytelling, the music, the writing, the voiceovers, this core experience that players have, right? That's been going on for 20 years that keeps millions of players playing. And yes, I know some of you out there are going to say, yeah, but it doesn't have the 12 million it had when Cataclysm launched. Do you know why? It's not because the game sucks. It's not because the game changed. It's because back then we didn't have Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus and 5,000 other games launching every single day to take our time away from World of Warcraft. It was still a world where there was relatively few MMORPGs that you could play. And then after World of Warcraft showed the world that you could get 10 to 12 million, suddenly we started getting all these clones coming out. Quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. So it's just natural that the game doesn't have 12 million players like it used to have, but it still very much maintains a loyal player base of millions, and there's millions more who play the classic experience and the Season of Discovery and the things of that nature. Um, the core experience of World of Warcraft is what has kept people playing all these years, and if it weren't for the core experience, I wouldn't be here today making this video 20 years after the game launched, talking about how I, as a new player who didn't really start playing retail until the end of 2023, 19 years into the game's lifespan, I wouldn't be here talking to you about how much fun I'm having and what a great game I think it is and how much fun our guild is having. Like, I wouldn't be here doing that if the game didn't have a core magical experience that has captivated millions over the years. So I love the fact that I'm not a jaded ex-veteran, and I love the fact that I can play this and still enjoy it after all these years. But I also still enjoy like Lord of the Rings Online and Star Wars: The Republic. I keep those games installed. I've played them since launch. I don't play them as my primary games, but I do, regularly rotate into them at least once a year and go have fun in those. Other games have fallen behind just because of nostalgia. I have no desire to go back to EverQuest 1 ever again. I've done a lot of that over the years, the progression servers, and I've done my time and I'm past it. EverQuest 2, probably never again either, because I've just done it to death. I'm having a lot of fun in World of Warcraft. We've been steadily growing on the Moonguard server. I think we're up to 170 members is what I was seeing on the recruiter the other day. So we've come a long way, and we just formed at the end of, at the BlizzCon of 2023 was when we started forming up. And the entirety of BlizzCon, that promotion of the World Soul Saga, that's what got me excited. That made me go, oh, we're talking about a trilogy of storylines that's going to get me into your game. That sounds pretty amazing. And so once I started playing and I started commenting on all these amazing things, it was like, well, where does all the negativity come from? Because what I see, the core experience that I'm experiencing, is a completely magical game that I have nothing but good. I literally have yet to find a negative to my experience in World of Warcraft. Now, granted, I've only been playing it. Some of you would argue, um, I did my classic stuff over a couple of years. I'm probably, 4 or 5 months into my retail experience. Um, I don't think I've paid for an annual subscription for an MMO since probably EverQuest 1 20 years ago. Um, or EverQuest 2, maybe less than that. No, about 2004-ish. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've prepaid for a whole year for a game, and I like World of Warcraft enough that when 2024 rolled around and it was like, well, what's my first business purchase of the year going to be? It was, well, I'm buying an annual subscription because we're having so much fun and we've got 3 years of plans ahead of us. So I don't know. I just think it's an interesting discussion to have. Bubblini was the one who prompted me to ask those questions. It's been a while ago though when I took those notes, but I finally got around to making a video about this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to join us, we are on the Moonguard server. We play extremely non-sweaty. We play every single day, but we raid on Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Central, but it's normal mode only. There are some people in the guild who like to do heroics and mythicals for dungeon's sake and just for gear grinds, but our raids are only normal mode. It's just stories. So if you want to come over, hang out with this Moonguard server, you know where we're at. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Daily streams here and on Twitch. Check out all the other games I play, the playlists, and etc. Thanks to those of you who support and keep me on the air full time. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Happy gaming.